And you know, you're alluding to, you know, some of this activity being hosted in the back. I guess, Chat, you've done a little bit of study on servers that may be helping to facilitate exploits. Do you have any comments?
Yeah, I did some interesting research. There was a conference in Los Angeles this weekend called the Southern California Linux Expo, and they asked me to come and talk about some Linux security stuff. And it's not something we focus on all that much because most of the, you know, we're looking at all these exploits. While an exploit may work, say, on Flash for OS X and Linux as well as Windows, the way we see the criminal, you know, the criminals typically weaponize this stuff, it's almost always focused on the Windows victims. So I started poking around and saying, well, what role or what, I guess, yeah, what role does Linux play in this malware ecosystem, right? We know most of the web hosting infrastructure out there is running on some sort of a Unix or a Linux-based system, and I wanted to kind of compare, say, to the Netcraft data just to see what kind of trends we might see. And there was some really interesting bits that came out of it. I mean, it looks like from my research, which is I took 1 week's worth of malicious URLs from our lab, which was about 178,000 malicious URLs that we cataloged in 1 week from February 1 to February 6. And then I went and cataloged each one, like, you know, what CMS might they be running, what web server might they be running, that kind of thing. And it was 79.9% of them were running either Unix or Linux that were hosting the exploit kits, the payloads, the infected blogs, the malicious redirects, the JavaScript, etc. And surprisingly, there were some interesting bits around servers that are compromised to direct victims to bad things had different characteristics quite dramatically than servers that were intentionally hosting bad things and waiting for victims to be directed there. So going back to the rig, you know, discussion we just had, you would see the infected blog that's legitimate, that's directing traffic, and those 16% more of them were running Apache than any other web server. Whereas when we look at servers that were hosting the malicious payload, perhaps the banking Trojan or the keylogger or whatever they're trying to install in the end, those servers had a propensity to run Nginx more than other web servers. So I haven't really fully analyzed the data to get all the details out of it yet, because it's quite a treasure trove of stuff I collected, but some interesting trends are emerging.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I think what we've seen in the past, you know, in terms of the Internet Weather Report, there have been a number of cases where we've seen actually searching around. It was a Tomcat server, for example, weak passwords, and so perhaps one of the vectors that are being used to actually get to these Apache web servers and to be able to host the malicious payload. Stan's nodding.
Yeah, a large portion of them were running cPanel as well. Now, I don't know that cPanel was the way they necessarily got in, but we did see worms exploiting the shell shock vulnerability that were targeting cPanel, so that might be one of the reasons.
Yep.
Did you gather statistics on WordPress, Joomla, the other common CMSs? Because I have a feeling those would be pretty well represented as well.
Yeah, that was harder to do. I don't have numbers that I'm scientifically comfortable with yet. I did look at those and saw that it was a very small number of Drupal and seemingly equivalent numbers of Joomla and WordPress sites that are part of the attack chain, and again, much heavier on the infected sites side than the hosting sites side.
Yep, that's what I'd expect.
I'll be publishing the data over the next few weeks, and once I've got some anomalies in the data, and I just want to check with my colleagues and make sure that they're actually interesting anomalies and not me screwing up the statistics. So once I have colleague verification that I haven't made any errors, I'll be publishing it all on our blog and sharing it so that other people can dig through it as well.
Oh, great. Thank you, Chet. It sounds like a prudent exercise to make sure that your statistics are good, and we're definitely looking forward to seeing what gets published here. Very interesting study there.